This week's episode of the Skeptic Zone podcast is dedicated to the memory of Pustifer, a delightful little cat.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 922 for the 7th of June, 2026. Richard Saunders coming to you this week from Berkeley, California. I'm in town to shake off the jet lags, staying with my good friend Eugenie Scott, before heading off to Buffalo, New York, to take part in the 50th anniversary of Psychon, or I should say the 50th anniversary of Skeptical Inquirer, Psychop. Coming up on this week's show, I take a stroll by the bay with Eugenie Scott, and we discuss Bob Steiner, who we have been covering on the Skeptic Zone over the past few weeks, and the great psychic hoax of 1984, because Jeannie knew Bob Steiner very well. Following that, it's Woo of the Week, formerly known as Woo Watch. There were too many woos, so now it's just Woo of the Week with Kate Thomas, and she's going to be looking at statins, something I know very little about. What's the state with statins? Find out with Kate Thomas. After that, we look at the mysterious cat, the cat in history, the paranormal, the superstitious, mythological. Why do cats have such an important part in human history? Then we have the Australian Skeptics newsletter, written by our editor Dee and read by Adrian Hill. Then to round off the show, we look once again into newspaper reports from the tour in 1984 of Bob Steiner, also known as Steve Terbot, the fake psychic. More announcements from me at the end of the show, but now it's time for me to run around the corner into the kitchen and have a nice everything bagel with whipped cream cheese and lox. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Albany Waterfront Trail. That's where we are, around the Berkeley area, heading down towards the bay. And isn't that sweet? There's a basket here with tennis balls for doggies, in memory of our sweet Lily, who loved chasing her ball at the bulb.
This is also called the Albany bulb, informally.
So and there's a picture of sweet Lily. Please enjoy a ball with your pup, and if you'd like to pass on the joy, feel free to leave it behind for the next excited visitor. Isn't that nice?
Very sweet.
I'm here with Eugenie Scott. Hello, Jeannie.
Hello, Richard. So good to have you back in the Bay Area.
Back in the Bay Area. Now, as we walk in, this is a well-known spot for dog walkers.
It is indeed. We're seeing a lot of people with dogs. It was just for dog trivia people. There's a real problem here with a very small kind of a weed that is easily breathed into the nostrils of dogs and causes all kinds of problems and big vet bills. So a lot of people walking their dogs here have their dogs in these quite fine mesh caps, I guess. They're not muzzles exactly, but it's a cap that fits over the nose and ears to keep these miserable little weeds from making your dog unhappy.
And as we speak, there's a dog just galloping by. There it goes.
Yeah, it's an off-leash area, so it's really a lot of fun. If you like dogs, this is a good place to come and dog watch.
Now, over the last few weeks on the Skeptic Zone, and even in today's Trove segment and next week's Trove segment, we're discussing the Steve Terbot hoax of 1984, perpetrated by one Bob Steiner from the Bay Area Skeptics, a friend of yours.
Indeed, a friend of long duration, and a wonderful skeptic who deserves to be remembered by all of us as having made a lot of contributions to our movement.
And he was the chairman, was he, at one stage? I'm trying to just remember the story I've been reading lately.
The founder of the Bay Area Skeptics. Yes. Back in 1982, just not very long after you Australian skeptics got started,
a year afterwards.
which I think is a reason why we Bay Area Skeptics feel such kinship to you guys. We're the earliest offshoots, as it were, of the PsyCop group from the mid-70s. 76, I guess, is when PsyCop was founded.
76, yeah.
Yep, and then
you and I are off to the 50th anniversary next week.
We are indeed, and as a matter of fact, funny you should mention, as part of my talk for the PsyCon conference, I am going to be talking about the Bay Area Skeptics and also the Bob Steiner and his efforts to expose problems, shall we say, with these charlatans in your country. The Steve Terbot project, which I've been listening to the last couple of weeks on the Skeptic Zone and really enjoying reliving a lot of that. I'm obviously not going into as much detail as you're going into because you had 2 weeks to talk about it, but I'm having fun.
We're just passing a little beach here at the moment, and full of dogs, and they're all running around like mad dogs because they're happy to be at the water's edge.
Yeah, it's a pretty big beach actually, and if you know anything about California, one of the things you pick up very quickly is that Northern California is not Southern California. And if you come up here in shorts and a bikini and you want to go swimming,
forget about it.
You are in for a real shock because the water here is really cold. And I think it's pretty cold even for dogs. They don't stay in the water real long.
No, but there goes one right in. Oh yes.
Maybe chasing one of those balls from that nice Labrador we saw in the picture.
Maybe so. Oh, lots of puppies. Oh my goodness me. Everywhere. I met Bob in the year 2000 when he came to Sydney. Mm-hmm. And I knew who he was because I well remembered the Steve Terbot hoax. What are your memories of Bob? I mean, from what I can gather from reading about him, he was doing the same sort of thing here. He was trying to expose psychics, but he was quite an accomplished magician.
Yes, absolutely. He was president of the Society of American Magicians and knew every magician in the country, it appears. Good friends with James Randi, who's one of our skeptical patron saints, of course, but everybody else as well. I mean, he knew all of the professionals. He himself worked professionally fairly often, but he did have a day job, which is the case with, I think, most performers. He was a CPA.
Yes, that's right. I remember that. I remember hearing he was an accountant, yes.
And actually, he gave me some extremely useful advice, pro bono, I might add, as a friend, when I was setting up the National Center for Science Education in 1987. And ex-college professor, what do I know about running a small business, right? And, of course, you have to keep track of your records. If you're a nonprofit in the United States, you are, as Bob explained to me, you are in a fishbowl, and you have to do everything very meticulously and keep good records, et cetera, to justify your tax-exempt status and so forth. And so he helped me set up my books. He helped me set up an accounting system. He was just so helpful to me in the early days, and he was a good friend. He was a good friend for many, many years. We obviously shared the skepticism interest, and but we also became good friends. He would have Thanksgiving with us quite regularly. And one of the things you learn pretty quickly about Bob is that if you invited him over, whether it was just you or whether you had another group of people as guests as well, it wouldn't take very long. If there was even the slightest lull in the conversation, he would whip out a deck of cards.
Oh, that reminds me of Randy. It wouldn't take him the slightest prompting before out came the cards, or he'd make the napkins disappear or something.
Yes, Bob used that napkin disappearing trick as well. It was always a great crowd pleaser. No, the I think if you're a performer, it's in your blood. It doesn't matter whether you're a performer of magic or you're a stand-up or whatever. You want to have an audience around you. And Bob and Randy were cut from the same cloth in that regard. So, but it was always very fun. And like I said, he was very frequently a Thanksgiving guest of ours. Because, we tend to have a big bunch of people over. We tend to collect the people who don't have family to come to our house. And, everybody always enjoyed having Bob because it would be fun. And he would do all these things. You couldn't figure it out because he was a very good sleight of hand guy. And, of course, the thing that sold Bob or the thing that sold Randy and any other really good magician is the patter. The setup.
Yeah. It's all part of the act, part of the routine, part of what
the performance.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Now we're gazing off here to our left. There's the Bay Bridge, and we can see downtown San Francisco. Although it's a little bit hazy today. There it is. I can see the skyscrapers of San Francisco across the bay. And if I look even further to my left, back in the opposite direction we've been walking, I'm gazing more or less down towards Berkeley.
And Oakland over there, though.
That's Oakland, okay.
Emeryville and
Oh, yeah. In a matter of, about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks or something like that, we have Skeptical.
Yes, we have Skeptical on June 27th. And you are going to be one of our headliner speakers, I'm so pleased to say. We really had great luck that SciCon was the same month that Skeptical, because we were able to capture you while you were in
Snag me while I'm in the country. I'm going to be talking about my adventures at Mind Body Spirit, Mind Body Wallet over the past 25 years.
It's going to be fun. It will. It's always fun. We love having you speak. You've spoke at Skeptical previously, and it's been a real treat. So we're all looking forward.
But there's a great lineup of speakers this year, and every time I've gone to Skeptical, I've had a wonderful time because it's so fun. We even play Skepperdy.
Skepperdy is a highlight of the whole adventure there. Bill Patterson, who is one of our Bay Area Skeptics board members and a long-time Skeptical contributant, he's been organizing these Skeptical Jeopardy contests, which are run just like the television program. Hopefully we're a small enough potato that they're not going to worry about copyright infringement. It's really, the stakes are really low, folks. Don't worry about us. And the questions all have to do with skeptics and skepticism and so forth. And it's just really fun. It's just really a lot of fun. We generally get a couple of skeptics who really kind of know the biz. And then we also have an audience volunteer.
That's right.
Which is a fun thing.
I was a contestant one year, and the audience volunteer ended up winning, I remember.
He did. We were all so delighted, especially since it was a young kid.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great.
Good. But a great lineup for Skeptical this year. And if you are in the Bay Area later this month, please come along and meet Jeannie, meet myself. And I will put a link where you can get your tickets or more information in this week's show notes.
And I do want to call people's attention to the fact that the logo for this year's and all the previous 13 Skepticals was drawn by a graphic designer, Kernan Coleman, and it's brilliant. It is.
I've seen the logo. I've seen the T-shirts. They look great.
Yeah, you got your name on the back of the T-shirt, but anybody else who wants a T-shirt, it is just so cool, I got to say. Can go to Skepticalcon.com. Very easy to remember, and there'll be the link, of course, on Richard's website. But if you're anywhere in Northern California, come and see us. June 27th, a Saturday, we'll be meeting in Oakland at a place called Oakland Asian Cultural Center, OACC. A very easy walk from the 12th Street BART, so you don't even have to fool with parking. Although there is parking on site, but yeah, take public transportation, it's good. It'll be fun. Hope to see you there. I will see you there, Richard.
And I'll see you there, Jeannie. Thank you once again, and let's continue walking over this hill and see if we can find some more dogs.
It won't be hard.
This way?
We can take this loop here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many little side passages here.
With all the weird, wacky woo that's worth watching, it's Woo of the Week with Kate Thomas.
Hello friends, welcome to Woo of the Week. The Statins are not the villain the internet would have you believe edition. This week we're tackling one of the most misunderstood and most studied medications on the planet, statins. Think atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, simvastatin, pravastatin, lorstatin, you get the idea. Because according to social media, they cause dementia, destroy your muscles, damage your liver, and are apparently part of a giant pharmaceutical conspiracy. Which is awkward, because statins are among the most extensively studied medicines ever developed. And like any good conspiracy theory or myth, it starts with a kernel of truth that gets wildly extrapolated without regard to biology. One of the most common arguments goes something like this. Your brain is made of cholesterol, which is true. About 25% of all of your cholesterol is in your brain. What does the brain use cholesterol for? Several critical jobs. Building cell membranes. Every brain cell, neuron, is surrounded by a membrane. Cholesterol helps maintain the structure, stability, and fluidity of those membranes. Think of it as part of the brickwork that keeps cells intact. Also making myelin. Myelin is the fatty insulating coating around nerve fibres. It's a bit like the plastic coating around electrical wires. Myelin allows nerve signals to travel rapidly and efficiently. A large proportion of brain cholesterol is found in myelin. Also forming synapses. Neurons communicate through connections called synapses. Cholesterol is essential for the formation and maintenance of these connections. Without adequate cholesterol, neurons struggle to communicate efficiently. And supporting learning and memory. The brain continuously remodels synapses as we learn new information. Cholesterol plays an important role in this synaptic plasticity. This is one reason scientists became interested in whether statins might affect cognition. Fortunately, the evidence overall hasn't shown an increase in dementia. Making neurosteroids. The brain can convert cholesterol into various neurosteroids that influence mood, memory, sleep, and stress responses. And this is an active area of ongoing research. Then comes the leap. So lowering cholesterol must be bad for your brain. And this is where things go off the rails. It's a bit like saying fish live in water. So if I drain my swimming pool, the fish in the ocean will die. They're sort of connected concepts, but they're not the same thing. Your brain is protected by something called the blood-brain barrier. Think of it as an incredibly fussy border control officer that doesn't let much through. The cholesterol circulating in your bloodstream doesn't simply wander into your brain. Your brain largely makes its own cholesterol locally, which means lowering LDL cholesterol in your blood doesn't mean your brain suddenly runs out. Another comment I often see is, but atorvastatin crosses the blood-brain barrier. And that's true. Some statins can enter the brain to a small extent. But here's the part that's usually left out. Statins don't work by roaming around the body sucking cholesterol out of every cell they encounter. Their main effect is in the liver. They block an enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase, which reduces cholesterol production in the liver and causes the liver to pull LDL cholesterol out of the bloodstream. That is how they lower cholesterol. So even if a statin molecule is present in the brain, it doesn't automatically follow that it's lowering brain cholesterol to clinically significant levels. In fact, if statins were substantially shutting down cholesterol production throughout the brain, we'd expect to see widespread cognitive decline showing up in large clinical studies. And that's simply not what the evidence shows. Presence is not the same as effect. A firefighter can walk into a building without turning every room into a fire station. But everyone in the dementia home is on statins. This is my favourite example of confusing correlation with causation. A chiropractor, of course it was, recently posted a video asking people to notice how many residents in aged care facilities are taking statins. Let's apply the same logic elsewhere. Have you noticed how many people in aged care memory units wear glasses? Have you noticed how many have grey hair? Have you noticed how many own slippers? None of these cause dementia. They're simply common among older people. And older people are exactly the group likely to be prescribed statins. That's because they're also the group most likely to have cardiovascular disease. What does the evidence actually show? This is the boring bit, which is why social media tends to skip it. The best evidence we currently have suggests statins either have no meaningful effect on dementia risk or may actually reduce dementia risk, particularly vascular dementia. Why? Because strokes can damage the brain, statins reduce the risk of strokes. Less stroke damage means less vascular dementia. It's not particularly exciting, but science rarely is. But what about the memory problems? Now, before the comments section and Richard's inbox explodes, let's acknowledge something important. Some people taking statins report memory problems, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, forgetting names, and that's not something we should dismiss. The key point is that when these symptoms occur, they're generally uncommon, and when they do happen, they're usually reversible when the medication is stopped. That's very different from dementia. Dementia is a progressive neurodegenerative disease. Forgetting where you parked the car for a few weeks after starting a medication is not the same thing as developing dementia. Can statins occasionally cause memory-related side effects in some individuals? Possibly. The evidence suggests they can. Do they cause dementia? The evidence says no. Those are two completely different questions. Now, this doesn't mean statins are perfect. They absolutely have side effects. Some people develop muscle aches. A small number develop significant muscle injury. That's real. But somewhere along the line, social media turned some people experience muscle symptoms into statins destroy everybody's muscles. That's like saying some people get a cough from an ACE inhibitor. Therefore, blood pressure tablets destroy lungs. The risk exists, but the exaggeration becomes detached from reality. One of the more entertaining things about making evidence-based content online is that eventually somebody calls you a pharmaceutical shill. I've been a pharmacist for 25 years. I've worked in hospitals, community pharmacies, aged care, palliative care, medication safety, governance, and consulting. And I am still waiting for my giant check from Big Pharma. It must have been lost in the mail. The reality is much less exciting. In Australia, healthcare professionals can't take money from pharmaceutical companies to promote prescription medicines to the public. As a pharmacist, I don't get a bonus if somebody takes a statin. I don't get a bonus if somebody doesn't take a statin. My mortgage is completely unaffected by your cholesterol level. What I do care about is whether the claims being made are supported by evidence. Because if we're going to reject decades of research, the burden of proof sits with the person making the extraordinary claim, not with the evidence. The real question isn't, are statins good? The real question is, are statins worth it for this individual person? For someone with established cardiovascular disease, a previous heart attack, a previous stroke, diabetes, or high cardiovascular risk? Often yes, very much so. For a healthy 30-year-old with no risk factors? Probably not. And that's why medicine isn't a religion. It's risk versus benefit, patient by patient. To coin a phrase much touted by big wellness, a holistic approach to the patient. The thing that makes statins such a good Woo of the Week topic is that they're a reminder of how easily a story that sounds logical can outrun the evidence. Your brain is made of cholesterol, sounds logical. People with dementia take statins, sounds logical. But sounding logical and being correct are not the same thing. Ice cream sales increase in summer. Shark attacks increase in summer. Therefore, ice cream causes shark attacks. You get my point. And that's why whenever somebody tells you that statins are obviously causing dementia, the best response is, interesting theory, now show me the evidence. Because in science, plausibility is where the investigation starts, not where the investigation ends. And if anyone from Big Pharma is listening, apparently I'm owed about 25 years of back pay. Please. As always, you can get more of me by following along on Instagram and TikTok at Prescribe or Pass, or on YouTube at On the Mones, MONES, or my own potty On the Mones, which is available on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And if you want more of a personalised experience, book an appointment with me via my website, www.medicationclarity.com.au. See you soon for another Woo of the Week. Bye.
The feline and the phantom. Cats in the paranormal and history. Anyone who's ever owned a cat knows the feeling. It's the middle of the night, the house is dead, silent, and suddenly your cat freezes. Its eyes widen, logging on to a completely empty corner of the room. Its ears twitch, tracking something invisible as it moves across the ceiling. In that quiet moment, it's almost impossible not to wonder, what are they seeing? People have been asking exactly the same question for thousands of years. No other animal on Earth has walked the fine line between the domestic, and we might say the divine, the cuddly and the cosmic, quite like the domestic cat. Throughout history, cats have not just been pets. They've been viewed as guardians of the afterlife, companions to the occult, familiars to witches, and a bridge from the known to the unknown. Looking at cats and superstition and the paranormal, of course, we look back to ancient Egypt. The Egyptians didn't just love cats like the rest of us do. They revered them as earthly vessels of the divine. The most famous feline deity was Basset, the goddess of home, fertility, and protection. Basset was a fierce defender against evil spirits and invisible enemies. To the Egyptians, the glow of the cat's eyes in the pitch black of night wasn't eerie, it was a spark of sun god Ra, piercing through the dark to ward off malevolent forces. Harming a cat was a capital offence, and when a family cat passed away, it was often mummified, depending on the era of history, with the same care given to mummifying humans. Now we move to the Middle Ages, and the cat's nocturnal dependence and silent, predatory grace ceased to be looked on as divine. Instead, it was viewed as demonic. A religious paranoia swept the continent, and the Catholic Church began to associate pagan traditions with devil worship. Because cats had been so highly revered by non-Christian cultures, they were demonized. By the 16th century, the cat, particularly the black cat, was firmly cemented in folklore as the witch's familiar. A familiar was believed to be a demon or demonic, sent by the devil himself to assist a witch in her black magic art. Folklore even claimed that witches could shape-shift into cats and other animals to spy on their neighbours or to slip into homes unnoticed. There was a popular belief that a witch could only take this form 9 times before permanently being trapped, a superstition that many historians believe mutated into our modern myth that cats have 9 lives. Tragically, this paranoia led to the mass slaughter of millions of cats across Europe, an act of superstitious panic that backfired terribly when the rodent population exploded, accelerating the spread of the Black Plague. While Europe feared cats as demonic spies, other cultures across the globe viewed them as highly complex supernatural entities. In Celtic folklore, particularly in Scotland and Ireland, people feared the cat Sith. Sith, a spectral fairy hound that took the form of a massive black cat with white patch on its chest. The cat Sith was believed to be a soul stealer. If a person passed away, villagers would hold lively wakes, playing games and scattering catnip in the rooms away from the body, entirely to distract any passing fairy cats. They believed that if a cat walked over a corpse before burial, it would steal the departed soul before it could reach the afterlife. Meanwhile, across the sea in Japan, aging cats were thought to evolve into yokai, a supernatural spirit. Folklore warned of the bakaniko, a cat that lived so long it gained magical powers, learned to walk on its hind legs, and could speak human languages. There was also the nekomata. I hope I'm pronouncing these Japanese words correctly. I know Michelle Bickersma would be listening intently. A more malevolent, split-tailed cat spirit said to possess the terrifying ability to manipulate the dead like puppets or marionettes. Despite centuries of fear, the narrative always loops back to protection. Sailors, famously superstitious, defied the landlocked fears of the Middle Ages. To a sailor, a black cat on board wasn't a curse. It was ultimately a good luck charm, capable of using its mystical powers to predict or even alter the weather to ensure a safe voyage. Today, we no longer put cats on trial, nor do we worship them in golden temples, although the Skeptic Zone cats would disagree with that. Instead, we give them cardboard boxes and film their antics for entertainment on the internet. But that ancient mystique and wonder has never truly faded. When a cat stares at a blank wall or purrs as if comforting someone we cannot see, we are reminded of why our ancestors feared and adored them. They remain what they have always been, beautiful, independent enigmas, with one paw firmly planted in our world and the other stepping quietly through the veil to the unknown. I don't know if you have a cat or two or three or four at home, but there's nothing quite like having a cat around. They can be a nuisance, they can be trouble, they can upset recordings, they can howl in the middle of the night, but they are, all of them, quite special.
Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, Canada, and I'm here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. This is newsletter number 248. Don't forget, you can sign up to this newsletter at skeptics.com.au and get the full report, complete with all the links every other week, right into your inbox. But let's see what our news editor, Dee, has for us this time. Hi all, says Dee. For our upcoming collaborative convention, Nauticon, Australian Skeptics is proud to be presenting multiple scholarships for students to attend. We encourage you to forward details to applicable students. There's more info on Nauticon later. In the news this fortnight, an intriguing interest in the community surrounding the elusive Bigfoot, with British sociologist Dr Jamie Lewis appearing on an ABC radio featurette. Also, Nate Eggins hosts his 4th consecutive planetarium variety show for the 2026 National Science Week, up in Brisbane, Queensland, promising quirky sciencey music and laughs abound. More information can be found in our special events section of the newsletter. We at Australian Skeptics have teamed up with the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe to bring you Nauticon Skepticon, Life, the Universe, and Everything, our 42nd annual conference. Tickets are on sale. In the meantime, read on, D. Okay, D, I'll do just that. Nauticon, Skepticon Scholarships. Calling all secondary and tertiary students, Australian Skeptics and the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe bring you Nauticon plus Skepticon 2026 in Sydney, July 23rd through 25th. We would love to see as many students there as possible, and to that end, we are delighted to offer a range of scholarships for students who are able to attend. Scholarships that are available are 5 full scholarships at $350 each and 20 partial scholarships at $200 each. For more information and to apply, visit www.skeptics.com.au. Scholarships are provided by the Trainer Foundation to promote the development of critical thinking skills in young people. Nominations for the 2026 Bent Spoon are still open. Now, if you have a burning nomination for the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle, you can forward them to our nomination page. Nominations should be for events, activities, or claims that have occurred in Australia or by Australians. And the winner will be announced at Nauticon Skepticon in July. Am I hardwired to never see a ghost? Belief in spirits and hauntings isn't uncommon by any means, but are some people more prone to these kinds of thoughts? And could it have a physical or environmental explanation? We have discussed before that the theological denominations and certain cultures are more likely to spur such perceptions, but also that some cultures covet encounters with spirits. Bigfooters, the borderlands of legitimate science. Bigfoot exists, but not necessarily as a biological creature, but certainly as an object around which thousands of Americans organize their lives, analyzing evidence and making knowledge. This featured book examines the sociology of the Bigfoot community. Also, ABC catching the Bigfoot hunters. Ooh, did they catch them in a net? An ABC Radio National featurette explores those who identify with the Bigfooter community in the U.S. and the line they toe between mythology and science. This is an 18-minute interview with the co-author of the above book. Evidence everywhere, but not a drop of proof. The U.S. Department of War has released its second batch of files on unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, or UAPs. These are objects that the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies cannot identify and have in recent years received unprecedented coverage, but have yet to contain anything of substance. Even regular supporter Avi Loeb is not convinced, as in this interview. Diphtheria is spreading in Australia, and so is misinformation about it. A diphtheria outbreak has spread to multiple states and territories in Australia, and falsehoods about the bacterial disease and vaccines are spreading just as quickly on social media. Meanwhile, parents dangerously refuse the vitamin K shot for newborns. Often lumped in with anti-immunization rhetoric, some new parents are refusing their children a vitamin K shot. Sometimes administered at the same time as hepatitis B. It is still, however, viewed in the same light by anti-vaccination groups for its visual similarity in dispensation. Skeptics in action. If you have any ideas for stories or want to contribute to Skeptics communications, such as our Facebook group or other social media, or just have something you want to get off your chest, then you're welcome to get in touch. News leads should be sent to newstips@skeptics.com.au. Comments and suggestions should go to editor@skeptics.com.au. Items of interest. Psychic punter takes aim at World Cup winner. Psychic Michael Bruno of Brazil is predicting Portugal to win their first ever World Cup this year, allegedly having divined the winner 3 times in a row from 2010 to 2018. He only gave an incorrect 2022 prediction because of a final penalty shootout, which is still wrong, but honestly, who's keeping score? Silly story of the week. The myth of zero-change time travel. This is a quirky little piece taken from a longer paper on time travel fallacies. For example, the attempt not to change history and therefore the future. Nope. Story of the week. What kind of aliens are you talking about? This is rather in poor taste. The White House has launched a website that tells the reader aliens, quote, walk among us, end quote. Despite appearing to be a site about extraterrestrials, it highlights the work of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Well, that's all for this week, and I want to talk to you now about some feedback, or shall I say pushback, I've had from a few people about how I say NASA. And I'm sure there's a few more of you out there shaking your heads at me because I'm pronouncing it like the capital city of the Bahamas. And it turns out that I am not the only person to do this. I had trouble finding anything official, but it seems that it is possibly a Canadian or even just an outside of the US thing. And here is one person's comment that I found on Google. It says, quote, I've lived in Canada 25 years. In the last 10 or so, I've noticed that Canadians, they pronounce NASA like Nassau. Does anyone have a theory about why this would be, end quote. And I have to say, not all Canadians say it that way. For example, my husband doesn't. And there are people speculating that it is because NASA or NASA or Nasser is close to Nassau Bay and the Nassau Bay Hilton. And after listening to many people saying it with various accents, the British version sometimes almost sounds like Nasser, and I kind of tried to do that earlier. I find speech peculiarities very interesting, and I have many of them apparently. And I'm going to finish off with a sentence to illustrate this. At our favorite niche or niche Italian spot, the tomato or tomato, pasta or pasta, was so good we barely noticed the rain shining on the asphalt or asphalt outside. And yes, those variations are real. Until next time, this is Adrienne Hill from Skookum Studios in Calgary, or Calgary, Canada.
It's time once again to go back to those archives at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, but actually, no, not today, not exactly. We'll be looking at some newspaper archives, or a newspaper archive, not from Trove, but from the Australian newspaper, as reprinted in the Skeptic magazine from Australian Skeptics way back in 1984. Now, over the past few weeks, we've been talking about Steve Terbot, the Steve Terbot Hoax of 1984. This is where Bob Steiner from the Bay Area Skeptics came to Australia and posed as a psychic, one Steve Terbot, and fooled thousands of people with radio and TV appearances, and it was later all exposed on national TV by Bob himself. Well, in the lead-up to the trip, co-founder of Australian Skeptics, Philip Adams, who had a newspaper column in the Australian newspaper, wrote about the impending visit, and then later wrote about the effects afterwards, after the exposure. or expose. So this week I'm going to read his column attacking Steve Terbot, and next week the column published later after it was all shown to be a hoax. And this was published on the 5th of May, 1984. Damn These Psychic Forkbenders by Philip Adams. Around 1850, Horace Greeley, whoever he was, said, quote, "Go west, young man, and grow up with the country," end quote. Obedient to his clarion call, a great wave of people from America's eastern states started trudging towards the Pacific, and having gone west, they proceeded to go mad. The great western metropolises of Los Angeles and San Francisco are undoubtedly the hotbeds of American looniness. For around 60 years, the civilization that sits uneasily on the San Andreas Fault has produced enough insanity, instability, dementia, idiocy, cretinism, feeble-mindedness, obsession, psychosis, neurosis, hysteria, delusions, paranoia, hallucinations, hypomania, delirium, crankiness, craziness, faddishness, if that's a word, driveling and general foolishness for the entire world. San Francisco, in particular, is in the business of franchising all those fast faiths that spread around the world like irritated hamburgers. Faiths with the lot. Faiths with everything, whether it's L. Ron Hubbard spawning Scientology or that demented Pied Piper, Jim Jones, leading his tragic troupe to mass suicide in his own tropical paradise. San Francisco is the starting point. It is the capital city of the cracked, the bonkers, the scatty, the screwy, the nutty, the batty, the cuckoo, the wacko, the loco, the daft, the dippy, the loony, the loopy, the potty, the dotty, the dizzy, the giddy, the queer and the odd. And we quickly remember here that Philip is using the word queer in its older sense, or one of its senses, meaning odd. We read on. Perhaps that is why the term go west means something different in this laconic and skeptical country. If something's gone west in Australia, it's on the hooter, on the turn, on the nose, which is another way of saying it stinks. It's a pity San Francisco has become the nexus for nonsense, the capital city of the rabid rat bag. It is, after all, uncommonly beautiful, but the constant threat of seismic upheaval and the subconscious suppression of anxieties and nightmares seem to have caused the entire population irreversible brain damage. You might have seen Jana Wendt, and she was a TV reporter at the time, wandering around San Francisco on 60 Minutes, working with an operation called Delphi, doing little telepathetic exercises. While Miss Wendt and her producer did their best to remain skeptical, the net effect of the program would have been to convince many viewers of the validity of Delphi's psychic hard sell. I would have liked the opportunity to analyse the program piece by piece, but suffice it to say, members of the Delphi operated without rules or protocols drawn up in advance and had no independent judges. The Delphi team, determined to present themselves in a favourable light, designed the test, conducted the experiment, and acted as umpires. When you're dealing with tricksters, that's a very dangerous procedure. And the 60 Minutes team didn't seem aware that the Delphi crowd were responsible for legitimizing Uri Geller through a series of, quote, scientific tests, end quote. Like Geller himself, the tests have long since been discredited, and the boys at Delphi, or is it Delphi, have all the scientific credibility of your friendly neighbourhood phrenologist. Now, Australia is about to be invaded by the umpteenth San Franciscan seer, yet another supernatural star, a Mr. Steve Terbot, who is anxious to meet Premier Joe Bjelke-Peterson, whom he regards as, quote, the most spiritual of Australia's political leaders, end quote. Joh Bjelke-Petersen was the Premier of the state of Queensland for much of the 80s, I seem to remember. A very colourful character. Mr. Terbot claims to have, quote, just completed 3 years of intensive testing in the laboratory under the supervision of Jean Catane, PhD, end quote. Ms. Catane enthusiastically endorses Terbot's abilities in the following handout. I have been working with Steve in the laboratory over the past 3 years. We wanted to be sure before we told of our outstanding discoveries. Now I am prepared to shout it from the rooftops. We have a psychic who consistently scores above random expectation on virtually everything. ESP cards, metal bending, thought reading, you name it. Using the ESP cards, which were used by J.B. Ryan at Duke University, Steve has been scoring significantly above the random expectation on a consistent basis. Many scientific researchers have observed the experiments and all agree that this man can really do it under the tightest of test conditions. What is even more exciting, I have confirmation of both a theory and a hypothesis about psi. PSI. First, the theory. I have long held that psychic ability can be learned. Steve proved it. Although a brilliant person, when he started he was unable to score higher than the random expectation. With study and perseverance, he learned ESP and can now do it consistently. Now for the hypothesis. Steve Terbot has confirmed that sex improves performance on ESP tests. After 2.5 years of study, Steve has leveled off at a relatively consistent score of about 30% on a 20% expectation. In itself a remarkable achievement. Then Steve fell in love. While I never got so clinical as to pry into his personal sex life, his score started to rise. Psychic tumescence already. After a period of sexual athleticism, Catane tests Terbot, who scored on average of 39.33% on 20% expectation, a result surely passing any properly controlled test score in history. So now we have a combination of the psychic with the sexual and exoplasm and ejaculation. Well, what I've learned about ESP is that it's a load of old rubbish, which is why I have a standing offer of $10,000 to anyone who can demonstrate any psychic ability under reasonable test conditions. Fellow skeptic Dick Smith goes even further. He's willing to write out a personal check for $100,000. I hereby issue a challenge to Steve Terbot to try and take the money. I publicly brand him a fraud and a charlatan and invite him to sue me for libel in any Australian or American court. I absolve the Australian, that's the newspaper, from all responsibility in making this challenge, as I'm sick to death of these carpet-bagging crooks who come to this country on their, quote, gullible travels, end quote, picking the pockets of the credulous and the vulnerable. And I'll just break in here to say, and that has been going on year after year after year since well before 1984. And all too often of the sick in search of miracle cures, being protected from sceptical journalists by Australia's antediluvian libel laws. I understand that Terbot will be appearing at the Ringwood Cultural Centre on May 15 and at the Lane Cove Town Hall on May 21. According to handouts, Mr. Terbot doesn't, quote, charge admission, end quote. However, he makes a spiel for donations at the end in the best style of American tent showman. I've asked my colleagues in the Australian Skeptics to take a close look at Terbot's performances and look forward to exposing, indecently if possible, the sexy psychic on my return from the Cannes Film Festival. A few years ago, I ragged off a Channel 10 program in which I was confronted with another San Francisco psychic, a bouffant-haired-dude blonde bimbo who claimed to have solved the Mason murders for the Los Angeles Police Department. Having already checked with the LAPD, I knew she was lying. But when I confronted her with the act, she managed to simulate some stifled sobs and got the entire audience hissing and booing at my brutish behaviour. What's happening in this country? If it's not the televangelist hot gospeling their Bible Belt fundamentalism on our networks, and that still goes on, it's an increasing percentage of the public allowing themselves to be hoaxed, to be had. So this was all in the lead up to the visit of Steve Terbot, of course, Bob Steiner. Next week, we will read Philip Adams' column After This Was All Exposed. But you don't have to wait for next week to find out what happens. If you so desire, you can go to skeptics.com.au, look for the journal link, and then navigate to the Skeptic magazine, which was volume 4, number 2, June 1984, to read that for yourself. Or, of course, you can sit back, have a nice week, and then hear for yourself on the next episode of the Skeptic Zone. But when you go to the Skeptic magazine and review, or you go to Trove, well, you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Thank you to my Patreon and PayPal supporters and Buy Me a Coffee supporters over at Skepticzone.tv. And all you people help keep the show going. Head for Skepticzone.tv for lots of links, including Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bickersma. What a great series that is. And links to Noticon next month in Sydney, Australia. And later this week, I hope to be catching up with some of the rogues from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe to just whet your appetite. And of course, for your tickets and more information, head to skepticzone.tv and look for the Noticon link. Also at the moment, I'm working on a story for the Skeptics, the Australian Skeptics homepage, about the recent appearances on the A Current Affair TV program here in Australia by myself and the president of Australian Skeptics, Jessica Singer. I was talking about a dodgy psychic talking to dead children, and Jessica Singer was commenting on yet another expedition to find Noah's Ark. Give it up. Just give it up. Noah's Ark. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Berkeley, California.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
Well, it's time for the dice game, and I have a very special guest visiting me all the way from Chicago. Hello, Avi.
Hi, Adrian.
How are you doing?
Very good.
And it's Avi Steiner, correct?
Yes, Avi Steiner. I am coming all the way from the Chicago area. And if you are in the Chicago area, then I want to invite you to come to our Chicago Skeptic Camp, which is going to be on June 27th.
We will put a link to the Eventbrite in the show notes.
Perfect.
I'm sure Richard will do that for you.
And you can also just search Chicago Skeptic Camp 2026.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the event will be like?
Yes.
Very briefly, because we have to do a dice game too.
Dice game. The event is going to be a half day from noon to 5 p.m. Right now we have 4 confirmed speakers, and we're definitely currently looking for more speakers. So if you are interested, please let me know. There's information on how to do that on the Eventbrite. We have somebody talking about scams. We have me doing a little math activity where we learn about gerrymandering and the math behind that. Very relevant. We have somebody talking about like some pseudoscience topics such as innate intelligence, animal magnetism, and stuff like that. And we have some other people talking, and hopefully you talking, the listener.
So let's get on with the game. So we have a whole bunch of dice here.
Okay.
And you know what this is about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you have to pretend and try to be psychic.
Wait, but I am psychic.
Oh, well, I can't wait until you prove it.
Wait, I have to prove it? I thought I just was supposed to just tell you that I'm psychic and you just believe me. That's what all the other psychics do.
Well, let's find out. It's not that easy in Skookum Studios.
Oh, dang.
So we have some really interesting shapes here. You get, as a guest, you get to pick which one.
I'm going to pick, well, you guys usually pick the D20, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick the D12.
A D12. So 1 to 12. Should we have Psychic Penny join us?
I think so.
We can look to see if you compare to her skills.
Mm-hmm. So we do 3 and a supplementary, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to choose, this is D12, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to choose a 3, a 7, 5 for Susan Gerbic, of course, and an 11. And you might know those all have something in common.
I think that they're quite prime numbers.
Yes, they are very prime.
Okay, so I am going to guess, it's a D12, so I'm going to guess 11, 11, 12, and 1. Why? I don't know. So, Psychic Penny, what do you think? Well, I'm going to guess. No, sorry. I am going to have the outside energies of the dice come into my heart or my brain or a part of my body. And I'm going to channel those numbers. And I'm channeling right now 7 because it's a good number. I know. Ooh. But I have to do 3 7s because good things happen in 3s. Ooh. And the last number will be 3. Roll away.
Okay, let's do this here. 10.
Nobody's psychic yet.
Nobody's psychic yet.
Ooh.
Is that a 4?
It is a 4. All right, again. 4 again. Oh,
I'm 1 away this time. I guess.
Yes, you were 1 away. You guessed a 5. Yep. All right, last one, last roll.
Yep.
It is an 11.
See, I'm psychic. I got it.
And you're the only one that got it. Now, if you had rolled that first, my first 2 guesses were 11.
See, I can influence the dice. And I knew that if I got all 4 of them correct, that would have been too impressive, So I just made it so that I only got 1%. And just because it looks like this all happened by chance.
You didn't want to outperform Psychic Penny too much.
Exactly, yes.
So the final numbers are 10, 4, 4, and 11. Thanks for joining me.
You're very welcome.